In Texas in 1993, a tragedy began to develop in the dark spring light, unseen until it turned into a fire that shocked the globe and left scars on the American psyche that have never fully healed. This terrible thing happened near the small town of Waco. To someone who wasn't trained, it looked like a normal picture. A low, rundown compound, surrounded by scrubland, trees that had been blown over by the wind, and a wide Texas sky. But inside the wooden walls of Mount Carmel, a prophecy was coming true. A guy who thought God had chosen him to finish the work that had begun in the last chapter of the Bible was in charge of it. He was a bad musician, a troubled wanderer, and a tremendously persuasive speaker who took over a small religious group called the Branch Davidians. His real name was Vernon Wayne Howell, but he went by David Koresh. Koresh didn't just talk about the end times. He also said he had been sent to bring them about. He told his followers, many of whom had quit their jobs, left their families, and given up their whole lives to follow him, that the end of the world was not just near, it was right around the corner. Some people thought of him as their leader, their prophet, and possibly their Messiah. Koresh turned Mount Carmel from a spiritual commune into a fortification. He said he was the only one who could father the next generation of chosen ones. But he also set tight rules and made moral lines less clear. In the name of divine marriage, he married several women. Some of them were as young as 12 years old. To fully submit to Koresh's will, followers were told to give up all earthly goals and accept full submission. Still, even if these facts are disturbing, many of his followers talked well of him and even loved him, calling him nice, smart, and having a heavenly understanding of the scriptures. They read the book of Revelation over and over again. They thought they were the 144,000 people who had been chosen to go through the Great Tribulation. As soon as they left the compound, the rumors began to spread. Reports from worried former members and people who lived nearby say that Koresh was torturing kids and stockpiling weapons. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which was already in trouble because of a series of public embarrassments, saw an opportunity to reestablish its power. They began building a case against Koresh and his followers not because of their religious beliefs, but because they had guns illegally and might be putting kids in risk. Their goal was for a big operation that would be available to the public and include a lot of guns. It wasn't going to end the way they had thought it would. On February 28, 1993, a line of cars that were not identified drove toward Mount Carmel. There were around 100 ATF agents in them, all wearing black and armed with automatic weapons, ready to fight. It was not able to keep the element of surprise which was intended to be the major goal of the military action. A local TV crew had stopped to ask for directions after hearing about the raid. They accidentally told a Branch Davidian postal worker, who quickly returned to the facility to tell the others. When the agents got to the gates, Koresh's followers were ready. Afterward, there was gunfire that was so loud that people could hear it for miles. There were thousands of rounds fired, yelling, and confusion on both sides for more than 2 hours of nonstop gunfire. By the end, 4 ATF agents had died, many more had been hurt, and 6 Davidians were found laying still on the site. Koresh was shot, but the wound was not deadly. Helicopters from the news were able to get pictures of the wreckage that was on fire. Live broadcasts showed the words Waco, Texas on TV screens in the United States of America. What was supposed to be a simple operation had escalated into a national disaster. The FBI took over in a matter of hours. They put loudspeakers, tanks, and snipers around the compound to keep it safe. The siege began, and for 51 days it was full of excruciating anguish. FBI negotiators met with Koresh on a regular basis to try to get everyone inside, especially the kids, to leave. Koresh played a psychological game by being cooperative, mysterious, and belligerent at times. He said he was waiting for a message from God at the moment. He said he would give up, but only after he had finished composing a handwritten document about the 7 seals of Revelation that was inspired by God. Every day that went by, things got worse inside the complex. There wasn't enough food. Sanitation was tough to find. A lot of the ladies and children were stuck inside the building, where it was completely dark. Everyone was always afraid about violence, stress, and not getting enough sleep. There was always the threat of violence. The government authorities outside are getting more and more impatient. There were disputes among FBI officials. Some wanted to put more pressure on the situation, while others were worried that something bad like Ruby Ridge might happen again. The talk didn't last long. The administration had made up its mind about what to do. On April 19, 1993, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, began its last offensive, under direct orders from Attorney General Janet Reno. Armored trucks raced in soon before daybreak, breaking through the walls of the enclosure and pumping in CS gas, which is a very potent tear gas that is meant to force the prisoners out of the compound. The agents were told not to shoot unless they were being shot at. They thought that the operation would make the Davidians stop fighting without hurting anyone. But something awful happened to the circumstance. About 10 minutes before noon, flames started to come out of the house. The fire spread quickly because of the wind and the compound's wooden structure. The whole building was on fire in just a few minutes. People in the U.S. watched in terror as the building caught fire on their TVs. You could hear shooting in the background. Federal agents wouldn't let firefighters into the building because they were frightened of being shot at from within. There was only a little less than an hour remaining. There was only ash and terrain that had been blackened remaining. On that day, 76 people died, including 25 children and 2 women who were pregnant. The autopsy showed that some of the victims had been shot, some had been suffocated, and some had been burned to death. A toddler's body was found stuck to her mother's body. David Koresh's body had 1 bullet wound to the head that killed him. We don't know if he killed himself or if one of his disciples did it for him. No one survived the building. The backlash happened right away and was very strong. Congressional hearings have begun. People quickly lost faith in federal agencies. Officials from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, said they had done everything they could to protect the innocent and that the Davidians had caused the fire as part of a plan to kill themselves in large numbers. Survivors told different stories. They said they couldn't get away because they were stuck. Even though Koresh wasn't perfect, he didn't mean for all of them to die. After then, there was the more evil legacy. Over the years, Waco became a symbol of state tyranny and religious persecution as part of the growing network of anti-government militias. For many people, the photos of tanks rumbling across Texas and a church burning down were not signs of justice. They were signs of violence. Timothy McVeigh, a man who had been in the military before, was one of the people who were deeply affected. He went to Waco to have a better look at the remains. On April 19, 1995, the anniversary of the tragedy, a truck full of explosives was positioned in front of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. This happened 2 years after the fire broke out. The blast killed 168 people, 19 of whom were children. He called it revenge. Over the course of many years, survivors and followers who still believe in the message that Koresh sent have rebuilt the remains of Mount Carmel. People walk around the grounds, passing by memorials and walls with names on them. The fire is still there, though, in the minds of a country that is still trying to understand what happened, but not on the land itself. There was a crackdown on a deadly cult, but was it necessary? Or was it an unforgivable act of aggression by the government against citizens in the United States? Share your thoughts on the Waco siege in the comments below. This is The Peculiar Files. Like and subscribe for more stories history tried to bury.